Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be learning how to multiply fractions. Before we get started, it'd be helpful if you had a pencil, some scratch paper, and an eraser, and maybe a partner to help you during some partner talk time. And don't forget, you can always pause the video to go back and review areas that you would like to. So before we get started, I want to ask you this question. Do you think multiplying fractions is similar to multiplying whole numbers? You can go ahead and pause and turn to someone near you and share your answer, or if you want to, you can write down what you're thinking. When you're ready, come back and join the video. Now, I am going to tell you that multiplying fractions is similar to multiplying whole numbers. We can actually use some of the same multiplication properties to help us as we multiply. And you'll find that as we go through this lesson, you'll pick up those similarities and it'll take you back to when you were practicing your multiplication facts. So, our objective today is that we're learning how to multiply fractions. As we get started, I'd like for you to think about how you feel about this assignment in this lesson before we get going. Are you at a level 4, 3, 2, or 1? Go ahead and write that down on your paper before we get started and we'll come back to it at the end. As a review, we practiced multiplying fractions by using models. We used the denominator to draw our model and we shaded different areas of the model to find the answer. Then we counted the shaded areas and used our denominator by counting the number of sections in our model. Our big idea for today for multiplying fractions is to understand that we'll be multiplying numerators and then we'll be multiplying the denominators. I also want you to understand that when you read a phrase that says find 3/4 of 2/3, it's the same as saying 3/4 times 2/3. So that word of really gives us that hint. It's an action word that we'll be multiplying. I also want us to think about the two different ways that we can multiply fractions. We're going to be looking at both, and I'm going to show you two different examples. The first example is to multiply first and then simplify. So if you look at this first box, I'm multiplying across the numerators first, and then I multiply across the denominators. That would give me 6/12. Then I would simplify 6/12. I would divide both the numerator and the denominator both by 6, which would give me 1/2. So that's one way that we'll be practicing today. Another way is to simplify first and then multiply. By doing that, we need to cancel out the numerator and denominator from the opposite sides. What I mean by that is we'll take a look at the numerator in the first fraction and compare it to the denominator in the second fraction. 3 and 3 can be divided into each other, and we would get 1. Then I look at the other two numerator and denominator and I ask myself, oh, can those be canceled out, or do they have a multiple that we could divide? And 2 can go into 2 one time and it can go into 4 two times. So that would work. That would give me two new fractions, 1/2 times 1/1. When I multiply across, I get 1/2. So either way, I get the same answer. These are just two different ways for you to see how we can multiply fractions. Like I said, we'll be going through both as we go through the lesson, and you can decide which one you prefer. You can also write out fractions like this when you're multiplying. So if I'm doing 3/4 times 2/3, I can go ahead and write it as one large fraction, 3 times 2 over 4 times 3. I still get 6/12, and I would still have to simplify. Our success criteria from today is based on our lessons that we've had in the past. We can represent our fractions with models. We can also interpret fractions as division. We can use models to multiply whole numbers and fractions, and we can also use models to multiply fractions. So let me show you this first example, 3/5 times 5/6. First, I'm just going to multiply straight across. Multiply my numerators. 3 times 5 is 15. Multiply my denominators. 5 times 6 is 30. Now I need to simplify. Is there any number that can go both into 15 and 30? Well, 15 divided by 15 is 1, and 30 divided by 15 is 2. So my answer is 1/2. Now, if I wanted to try this again and use my other method and seeing if I can simplify first, then I might let's see if I come out with the same answer. So 3 and 6. 3 can go into 3 one time, and it can go into 6 two times. 5 and 5 go in to each other just one time. So I multiply across. 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. And I got the same answer. So again, it's going back to what you prefer. So our steps are to multiply the numerators across, multiply the denominators, and then we'll simplify if needed. I do have here up at the top that if you want to, you can simplify first. It's up to you. Let's take a look at one more model. Now by looking at these 1/3 and 2/5, if I did want to simplify first, I can't. 1 and 5 can't be simplified, and neither can 3 and 2. So for this sample, I'm just going to have to multiply across. 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 5 is 15, and 2/15 cannot be simplified. So that would be my answer. All right, let's practice them together. If you'd like to pause and do them on your own, you can, or if you want to stick with me and practice together, you can do that too. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just multiply across. 6 times 3 is 18. 7 times 4 is 28. Now I'm going to see if I can simplify this fraction. I believe 18 can go into 2 9 times. 28 can go into 2 14 times. Can it be simplified any more? No, I think that's going to be it. My answer is going to be 9/14. Now, just to try this out, I would also like to, I'm going to just switch my color here, try simplifying first to see if I get the same answer. So 6 and 4 can be simplified. 6 can go into 2 3 times, and 4 can go into 2 2 times. Now I can multiply across because 7 and 3 can't be simplified. 3 times 3 is 9. 7 times 2 is 14. So I did get the same answer. Now before moving on, let's go ahead and talk. Choose one sentence frame and share what you learned. I'm going to choose the second one. I can solve this by simplifying first, and then multiplying with the numerators, and then multiplying the denominators. Let's try this one. 3/4 times 5/12. I'm going to go ahead and simplify first for this one. 3 can go into 3 one time, and it can go into 12 4 times. 4 and 5 can't be simplified. So now I can multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. 4 times 4 is 16. So my answer is 5/16. Let's go ahead and talk this one out. Go ahead and choose a sentence frame and share what you've learned. I would say I can check my work by not simplifying first to see if I get the same answer when I go through the steps and simplify in the end. Let's try this one. If I did want to simplify first, I would check my numerators and my denominators. 2 and 5 can't be simplified, and neither can 3 and 1. So for this one, I am just going to have to multiply across. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 5 is 15. So my answer is 2/15. Let's go ahead and talk this one out. I understand this because I multiply the numerators and denominators across, and I would probably also want to check my work with a model to see if I got the same answer. And I can use the model to justify my thinking also. Let's try this word problem. Carrie ate some of the oranges that her mother had brought home from the grocery store. Of the oranges her mother bought, 1/4 were left over. Sherry, Carrie's sister, ate 2/5 of the oranges that were left over. What fractions of the oranges did Sherry eat? Okay, so I have my keyword of, and that tells me I'm going to be multiplying. So 1/4 were left over, and her sister ate 2/5 of that. So I'll be multiplying 1/4 times 2/5. I can see if I can simplify first, which I can. 2 goes into 2 one time, and 4 goes into 2 two times, and then I can multiply across. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 5 is 10. So she ate 1/10 of the oranges. That's the fraction of oranges that Sherry ate. Let's go ahead and talk this one out. I would say it's important to know this skill because I might need to find the fraction of another fraction if I'm doing home improvements, if I'm figuring out something that I'm making with crafts, with sewing, or even with recipes. Sometimes we use a lot of fractions, and the multiplication of fractions will help us in those real-world applications. To close our lesson, what was our learning objective today? We're learning how to multiply fractions. I'd like for you to now write down how you feel about the lesson after we've completed it. Are you at a 4, 3, 2, or 1? Did you improve from the beginning of the lesson? Now, I'd like to ask you this question. Use what you know about multiplying fractions and area to find the area of this rectangle. You can go ahead and pause and try it on your own, or you can stick with me and we can do it together. Well, I know that area is length times width. And here I have two measurements. I have the length and the width. So I know I'm going to have to multiply 1/2 times 7/10 to find the area of this rectangle. When I multiply, I can check to see if I'm able to simplify. 1 and 10 can't be simplified, and neither can 2 or 7. So I just have to multiply straight across. 1 times 7 is 7, and 2 times 10 is 20. So the area of this rectangle is 7/20. And I would have to make sure I use my yards and squared to talk about the area. I have one last question for you. Taking a look at this problem, which property of multiplication is being shown in this sample of multiplying fractions? I want you to look closely and then explain how this problem was solved. You can talk to someone next to you or you can write down your thinking. Go ahead and pause and see if you can find the property of multiplication that's being used, and when you're ready, come back to the video. Now, when I look at this, I can see that the numerators are being multiplied across, and so are the denominators. When I look at this sample right here, I notice that the two numerators were switched. That property of multiplication is the commutative property. We change the order of the factors and the answer stays the same. This helps us to cancel out the 5 and the 5, which technically make it a 1 and kind of disappear because the identity property tells us that anything times 1 stays the same. So my answer is just 4/6, but simplified it would be 2/3. So we actually have two properties in this problem. Thank you so much for following along and learning how to multiply fractions. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. All right, thank you so much.